After hearing compelling testimony this week, members of the Transportation Committee called a press conference to push for greater school bus safety awareness.
Every time I see it, there are gasps in the room because it is shocking to watch.
It's literally stunning. And one of the things that I heard today is that between 100 and 250,000 violations a year of people going by a school bus with the stop arm out. And I just had no idea of the severity of the problem.
My bill's quite simple but quite important. It brings exposure to school bus safety and creates a little fund of money to help use to promote the problem of people not stopping for school buses.
A year ago on January 16th, I was driving my regular route in the morning, about 7 in the morning, and the car doing about 25-30 miles per hour went through the stop sign. In the process, it went just about hit a girl that was crossing the road, and the girl's brother was still in the driveway, so it went between the two kids, so we could have had 2 kids dead children that day.
Joining me now to talk more about school bus safety is Assistant Majority Leader and Vice Chair of the Transportation Committee, Senator John Jasinski. Thanks for being here.
You bet, Shannon. Love to come.
You discussed school bus safety in a committee hearing this week and also held a press conference to highlight the importance of school bus safety. What are the areas of concern?
You know, a failure to stop for the stop arm, or when a vehicle is passing down the road and the stop arm comes out with the stop lights and the flashing lights, we're still, shockingly enough, seeing cars go by that and not stopping for that stop arm. So we saw such compelling testimony yesterday in the video, as many people saw, of people just ignoring these stop arms. So we want to raise the awareness to make sure people are aware of that they have to stop for these and what safety issues it puts our kids into if they don't stop.
So you're referring to that video that we saw, and I would encourage anybody to go to that committee
Absolutely.
and watch it. It's been described as stunning, shocking, near misses, drivers just barely missing children, semis coming around on the shoulder. Senator Rich Draheim has proposed a campaign of awareness. Like, what might this look like?
Well, I think this is a great thing that we can do right here as a media thing like you're doing, so to raise the awareness. The media, we had a great show turnout yesterday from media people, so to get it across and get in the Tribune, get it in the Pioneer Press, and get it in our local newspapers that we need to have this. And then the bill also calls for $50,000 for maybe some television ads and things like that, maybe some billboards, just to get that word out to make sure people really need to understand they have to stop for these stop arms. It puts our kids in so much danger if they don't stop. And there was a couple videos first that you really didn't see a huge safety issue because the kids were on the one side of the street and they didn't stop. But if you look at some of the other videos that they were crossing, or it was early in the morning and or into the sunset, having those stop arms out there and people stopping to make sure they see those kids is so important here in Minnesota.
Another idea that I heard in committee of Senator Rich Draheim was to extend the length of those stop arms. Or I think there was one other, it's escaping me right now, but is that something that could be done? I
think they're looking at that. I think there's some kind of law that says it can only be in the lane of traffic. It can't go out into the next lane of traffic. But looking at that, maybe there's an exemption for this, because I think I saw a graphic of a bus stop arm that went way out. It was about an 8-foot arm that really did stop, so that would have to make people stop. So I think it's something we should look at. I think there's also some flashing lights and some things like that to get on there as well to try and raise that awareness. I don't know how some of these people can't see it, because I drive every day and I see them very, you watch for that type of thing, especially in the mornings at 7 to 7:30, and then in the afternoons from 3 until 3:30 is something every driver should be aware of when they're driving their vehicle.
Senator David Osmek suggested that we should potentially consider stiffer penalties, like DUI, for people who are doing things that are so dangerous. Now, I don't know if it's just for the act of doing it or if fatality or serious injury results, but should the legislature look at stiffer penalties?
We should look at stiffer penalties or mandatory sentencing or something like that. They talked about an instance where there was a near miss, and I think that the driver was only fined, I think it was $300, $150 surcharge, and then some community service. So for something like that, with a near miss as bad as it was, there should be stiffer penalties for something like that. And there was some repeat offenders where they can actually get the driver's license that they've had a second instance of the same type of safety issue.
There were school bus drivers who testified that smaller companies, some buses do have cameras, so they can get video of these drivers as they violate the law. Some of the smaller companies can't afford that technology. the drivers simply don't have the time or the wherewithal to get enough information to be able to bring charges. So another possibility maybe is to outfit all school buses with that kind of camera technology so you can catch them in the act?
Yep. I think we need to look at that, or some possible sharing or something with these schools. If there's some money available, we should look at that. You know, it's a he said, she said. If you don't have the video, the school bus driver, and what we saw yesterday, they're just so shocked and so upset by what happened, they can't get the license plate, and there was so much more detail that was required. And then they got into some of the courts, and they were throwing some of those things out because they didn't have the type of a vehicle, or just a lot of things about the color and things like that. So if you don't have all that information, it really gets thrown out in court. So having those videos there that actually proves it, they were saying a much more success rate by having video, that when they went into court, the people did plead guilty because they knew there was a video there versus trying to contest it. So I think it's important. We should look at it. We need to make our kids safe here in Minnesota.
Now, there was one other bill before the committee that's your bill. It would allow an interim inspection safety certificate on new school buses. What's behind this?
So what happens is every year, every bus company has to have all their buses inspected on an annual basis. The State Patrol comes in and does that. They have some specific staff that goes out and does that. But what happens sometimes if they buy a bus in the middle of that time where they have to replace a bus, what's been happening as a practical purpose is they give them an interim certificate until that next inspection. But what we found out by statute, that's not allowed. So what we did is change the statute or the law that basically says they can do that interim permit until the next annual inspection comes around. They have to get those buses out if they have say a bus gets in an accident and they need to replace that bus. This just saves the State Patrol going on a specific trip out to, let's say, War Road, Minnesota, or Winona, Minnesota for one specific trip. It's a new bus. They're all built to safety standards, so it gives them an interim permit to make sure that they can get on the road right away.
One other question I have for you. There was a Star Tribune article last November that reported a 12% failure rate among the state's largest school bus company in meeting safety standards. So we're talking about inspections, and these bus companies, or these buses, are annually inspected. But is there enough oversight, being done to ensure the safety of the buses? Is annual enough? How do we ensure that those buses that are carrying the state's children are as safe as they can possibly be?
Well, I think the annual inspection is working. 12% is a huge number, but it's something we should certainly look at. They explained some of the typical infractions are some buzzers on some back doors and some window things and some smaller things. So there may be some issues there, but whether they're a huge issue or not, we don't know. So I'd like to look at that and see if we can find out if we need to do that more on a semi-annual basis. But I believe at a 12% in some of the issues, I think they're getting those corrected. Every school bus company that I know and I've talked to are very concerned about safety to make sure that their buses are out there. They're safe for the kids to make sure, because they all have kids. So.
Senator Jasinski, I want to thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.